Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to today's episode. The title is Consciousness is an Oscillation Between the Known and the Unknown, and I want to attempt to share a bit more insight into the hard problem of consciousness and the easy problem. What's the implication of these ideas? You see, we're all conscious beings. We all go to different educational institutions. We seek different information. But why do we seek this information? To make our conscious walk have a different outcome or be different. You see, everybody is consciously existing, but we take it for granted. We don't wonder how it's happening. Now, on this planet, if you were wondering, hey, has my species figured out this problem? We have made certain strides, but the question is unanswered. That means that it's debatable, but in the sense there's the hard problem of consciousness and the easy problem. The easy problem is trying to see like how it expresses, in some sense, I would say, the neurological relationship, pretty much how consciousness happens. But the reason why it happens, why you are conscious of that internal cinematic language that's occurring behind your eyes, that inner film. The hard problem is another way of saying, why are we conscious of that inner film? That means the human being doesn't think about their heart. It just beats. You don't think about your lungs. But why is it that certain activities, certain phenomenology suddenly is in the scope of the conscious experience? So this question is important. Now, my view, one thing I noticed is that we were trying to solve the issue of the hard problem of consciousness the same way we were trying to see it as an object. What that means is there are some people who are it's purely towards physicalism. The quela, the subjective experience, the noumenon, it's hollow for them. That means matter's voice is louder. The known's voice is more louder and more real. But you can say for René Descartes, he felt just like there is a physical substance, there is a non-physical substance, that the mind is in its own room. The mind's chilling in a higher onion-style, a greater onion layer dimension, and the body's just like, oh. Now, I am attempting to share it in a different way. For me personally, I couldn't separate the known from the unknown. When I was younger, I could. When I was younger, I didn't, I'll be honest, I didn't care about the unknown. I felt we knew a lot of stuff. I felt there were bigger questions over my head that I didn't even need to wonder about. That means in my youth, I had actually more reasons not to know about the world. But the less I realized I didn't know, that became more of an inspiration. So the unknown can inspire you. You know, you can be inspired to know something as if you know something before and you want to see how it can update. And then you want to know something completely new. That means there's no correlation to your past experience. There's no familiarity. So what I'm saying is that we as conscious experiencers have certain states where it's unfamiliar and there is pretty much it's automated or we can't do much, or it's familiar. Sorry, it's either automated or you are in the driver's seat. You know, that means you're in the passenger seat. You can go into the driver's seat. I came and said it like this. I said, all right, so what do we know about conscious experience in the present moment that's universal? We know that human beings have known experiences and unknown experiences. But in actuality, every known experience isn't complete. When a human being looks outside, you don't know everything, but you know certain things. Your intelligence can recognize certain patterns. Now, if we treat the concept of the known and the unknown like night and day, and we consider a codependence between them. That means without knowing something, you cannot know it. Without the unknown, there is nothing to know, as if everything is already known. So these two dimensions are required. I feel the mind-body dualism that René Descartes, this French philosopher back in the day, got, where he's like, the body's in its own room and the mind is in its own room. If we say our knowledge is based on sensory perception, and we say our sensory perception is based on light primarily, even though there's other senses, that means we feel we know something when we can see it. And so many people, they want to see it to believe it, see it to believe it. But when you look in the mirror and you wonder what's the idea of you, you see the idea of you is it's something strange. I feel sensory perception, the moment we experience it, is simultaneously being translated into another density. Because it's like, okay, let me just build up with where I was going with it. Pretty much the known and the unknown's codependence means that we are reaching a point where it's either the object projecting the subject or the subject projecting the object. That means something human beings never thought. The superiority of the mind's realness to itself compared to the body. When I close my eyes, my subjective self arises. There's subjectivity that arises. Even if you open your eyes, you can visualize something and open your eyes and still see that visualization in the room, but not physically. You know what it is? It's like if I visualize right now in the sky a cube, just a blue cube hovering in the air slowly. Now, that blue cube is moving with in the how would I say it? If I was to visualize something, let's say that blue cube, I notice physical reality, whether I imagine or not, it is here, but the added dimension of the consideration of the cube, it's as if my mind is overlaying a room upon physical reality. So I feel our solution as a species to comprehending consciousness first is engage that we're not in one room. We're in multiple rooms. And in these rooms, I feel there's moments where the known moves the unknown as an object, as visible phenomenon. The known moves the unknown. Sorry, let me say it like this. The unknown moves the known. That's one possibility. This is why we feel we may never know it. And there was a man, let me find his name. What was his name? What was this man's name? Yeah, Nigel McGinn. Okay, and he says physicalism is true, but we can't understand its consequences. The hard problem is insoluble. Consciousness is a deep mystery. Our intelligence is wrongly designed for understanding consciousness. What does that mean? That means there is a missing piece. Hence the mystery, So, if it's the unknown moving the known, it's neither an object or a subject, because subjects and objects are known. So if we consider consciousness is the cause, from a causal view, it is unknown, and the effect of it is known, then we will never know our consciousness, because the cause is unknown. Everything we know is being considered the effect of it. But if we consider the cause is known, check this out, the cause is known, the effect is unknown, you know what that means? That means us, for example, we think we know everything on this planet, but imagine everything physical and visible. But I'm telling you, imagine we reach a point where we're like, holy shit, what if this whole world is the effect of a known cause? That means right now we look at the world and we're like, it's familiar, I know this place. But imagine this normality of ours. becomes unfamiliar because our familiarity is coming from a bigger framework. That means the person cried over their microcosmic death, but laughed at their macrocosmic life. So for me, this is the whole thing. Now, I looked into ancient cultures and I'm like, what were those guys saying? You know? And I realized that they were treating life like a simulation. So the more you go back in history, the more multidimensional the world is. That means when Friedrich Nietzsche declared a God is dead and man killed him, that means man killed the possibility of the multidimensionality of the world. Because the concept was connected to God. That means the atheists didn't realize that in fighting the concept, I mean, fight the cultural programming as much as you want. You know, you can, injustice has to be taken care of. But I'm saying honesty is also important in the calculation of injustice and justice. You know? And so I'm saying, like, this notion of, it's weird because the narrative of the religio narrative, the religious narrative, the monotheistic Abrahamic traditions, in monotheism, the notion of the multidimensionality of the world is connected to the idea of a single being. Now check this out. It's a single being. In monotheistic religions, it's one God, but this God is everything. So for me, it's like everybody's definition of everything is the same. Do you know what I mean? That means when it comes to the content of the conscious sensory found moment, I mean, that's a revolutionary attitude. Instead of we think it's sensory based, we think it's sensory found. That means our attention started looking at the problem of consciousness on that part of the mountain. Guys, I'll be right back. Just a quick 1 minute break. Okay. So pretty much, guys, I'm saying that consciousness is oscillating between the known and the unknown. There are moments where we feel more conscious than unconscious, and there are moments where we're more unconscious than we're conscious. In deep sleep, we are unconscious. The body is existing, but the mind is absent. In the dream state, the body is existing, but the body is absent and the mind is present in dream state, in the dream state. In the waking state, the body is present and the mind is more in the behind the scenes. That means people may feel that their dreaming stops, but I'll tell you, actually the mind is working all the time. It's like your heart. That means the mind has its internal cinematic language there. It's just our awareness to the inner room changes. I'm telling you, the most revolutionary thing that I found, that was kind of like, when, how would I say it? When I was looking at this, I was like, all right, so there's an existence here. This existence awakens. This birth is an awakening, and you know what's fascinating? Even though the child is born, the child doesn't remember until it's individual. That means I often think that when the person is not an individual, their memory happens different. My inner realms shift. My inner realms shift when I speak and I'm individual. It's as if like the antenna signal is different, and when I don't speak and I'm just watching, the antenna signal is different. And it's not just the antenna signal, it's just an authorization of the intuition. That means there's moments where I feel my intuition in the driver's seat, and there's moments where I feel my intuition in the passenger seat. The question still stands. Why are we conscious of the specific content in our awareness? That means why don't human beings have the experience of inside their skin? Why can't a human being close their eyes and actually see every organ? Because by just being it, you know? So for me, it's way more peculiar life's design, as if this creaturehood and let's say evolutionism. I feel it's the tip of the iceberg. I feel the visible, the known realm is the tip of the unknown. And we are right now thinking we can know the unknown in a certain way, only to realize that the unknown is all the other ways knowledge can move. So when there's moments in my life, I'll give you an example. In 2000, before I gave these talks, I would write a lot. And I remember in 2011, I was a totally different character, different person. You wouldn't recognize me if you saw me in 2011. And and in 2011, I was not aware of my inner realms. I did not feel life was a place I wanted to be in. It was a discomfort, you know. But I remember I was at this party in London, and I managed to go to London, and my cousin, he was like, as the modern poets say, he was balling. And so, anyways, I found myself at this party at night, and I oftentimes, I don't know why, in instances where I drink, there's times where I either become super open, or I just become very introverted. And anytime I become my attention is going more internal, I tend to write as a way of not just staying in the inner realms too long, you know. But anyways, that's the natural impulse. But anyways, I was there, and I remember I had read this quote from Ernest Hemingway, where he said, "Write drunk, edit sober." And I remember that was the night where I tried, and I remember I wanted to write a paragraph. I felt like writing a novel, This is before even the dimensions of actually what writing is. Like, this is before the realm of writing had opened up to me properly. And so I remember I just listened to, I think it was Ernest Hemingway's Mark Twain or Ernest Hemingway's advice, and I and so what happened is I just got intoxicated, and there was no story, there was no idea, and I realized you can't do anything creative unless there is of something that wants to change. That's what inspiration is, really. Because if you want to stay the same, you don't need inspiration. Have you noticed that? You don't need inspiration if you want to stay the same. Only when you want to change, there is something that pours out of the attention of the person. It's an effort. So I would sit down in 2011 in a known way in that experience and attempt to write a story, and I couldn't. And then it changed. I had the mentality where I stopped caring about writing. I stopped caring about wanting to create something and just went with the events of life until one moment suddenly a story or an idea, something arose in me that my hand found the pen before I had the reasons for it. So that there's moments where the known is attempting to do something with the unknown, and there's moments in life where whatever you do, whatever you try to know, there's unknown factors to it. There's unknown variables to it. So that's why I'm saying it's like in the dream state, it's like, did you think of the dream? You're like, all right, I'm going to think of this kind of dream, and then I'm going to dream it. No, it just happened. So it's an emergence into an event filled with design. Now, if we are considering consciousness to oscillate between the known and the unknown, and we consider that we are a known self in an unknown world, I think that's the most basic universal mindset currently in 2020. We're known selves in an unknown world, even though there's a hard problem of consciousness, but but we feel we know what's in our experience and we don't know what's outside of it. And any part of the world we can't see comes across to us as unknown. We know ourselves, but we know ourselves in the moment. That means we don't know our future self, and the past self we know we have residue, like a remnant. We have some sort of memory of it, some sort of recollection of it. And take into consideration its recollection. So you have this view where you may think life is like you're the same person living every day, or it's another view is that every moment is an act of creation. For me, the mind is like the potential of what it's as if imagine in one dimension you have more freedom. Imagine you're in two rooms. In one room you have a lot of freedom, in another room you can't move. So I feel there's a dimension to life in front of our eyes where we are considering it to be known, but when we ask known for who, it comes unknown. So really, it's like um, it's like a U, like the letter, like a caps, like a capitalized U. And one point of it is the inner unknown, and one point of it is the outer unknown. The inner unknown and the outer unknown. The outer unknown, what does the edge of the world look like? The inner unknown, what does the edge of the mind look like? Now, when we wonder about the edge of the mind, that's where language breaks, and I created a term because no one has done it, and it's called the language threshold. And the language threshold is the idea that there is some certain point in the human being's experience, there's access to experiences that our language cannot contain. We haven't even created the letters or the words for it yet. That's the ability in trying to have the ego vision mentality. You see, the ego stands on the branch, and if it doesn't see what it likes, what does it do? It flies into the sky. It flies into the sky and finds access to different locations. And I honestly feel we are like a camera that is zoomed in. Have you ever held a camera and zoomed in, and you're like, and then when you zoom out, you realize it had nothing to do with the camera. It was just the angle, the perception was. So we are zooming in to the materialistic, we are zooming into the phenomenon, not realizing that we need the noumenon. We need the inner seer. You know what's funny? It's like it's like asking a nihilist, like if you feel everything is nothing, then who feels nothing is nothing? There was a nihilist crying, guys. I'm gonna create a joke here. There was a nihilist crying, and somebody's like, "What's up, man? What's up, nihilist? Why are you crying?" And the nihilist is like, "It's nothing." I don't know. Some people might get that. Anyways, so the relationship of the known and the unknown. The known is a roller coaster of the laws of the universe. The unknown seems to have more to do with the free will and the source of a mover with an authorization before the laws of the universe. That means if we consider the mind to be so prior to the body, that means first there was mind, then matter. Imagine if that was the case. The mind was the causal point. The no the let's stick with that. The mind was the causal point. Okay, that means first you need a mind, then you need a world. Right now we're saying we need matter first, then to have a mind. But if we consider we need minds first to have matter, to even know what matter is doing, so then it makes the problem complex. So right now all human beings universally are left, when it comes to wondering about their consciousness, to wonder whether the matter leads to the mind, whether the mind leads to the matter, or whether they are simultaneous, whether it's multidimensional. We're either looking for singular truths or we are multidimensionally witnessing. Okay, guys, let's get back to it. So in the chat section, Daniel says, so we're everything and nothing, like everything comes and goes. No, I'm saying we're oscillating between moments of where we feel the consciousness. Here's the thing. Imagine life, we see it in two dimensions. Energy, which doesn't have a shape, it's just being, you know. It is before form, and then we have the form, the design. So there's a level to life where you look at things and they're just designs, that can correlate in, let's say, cause and effect relationships. And then there's a thing to life you see where it's just how phenomena is being here. It's like somebody wondering, what does the color blue mean? What does blue mean? Like what is the life purpose of the color blue? It just is. But then when you say it's like a blue flag or a blue light or a blue object, then you see there's a dimension of form added. It's not just blue only. It's not just on a color meaningless level. So I'm saying there's moments in the human experience where you feel you feel you are a known being in an unknown world, and there's moments I personally have experienced, and many others, and it's written in the history books, where in some sense it was unknown, where the self became unknown, where the existence became familiar, but in some sense, uh, the self becomes unknown. Sorry, the self becomes unknown. So what does that mean? That means right now we think we know who we are, we don't know where we are. But the other situation is going to be where we know where we are, we don't know who we are. I'm just saying that, first of all, things are changing. We got to keep that in mind. The question's being asked from a dynamic system, dynamic changing system. In a moving system, we're trying to wonder, what's a static truth? It's adorable. Wow. So guys, Daniel says something fascinating in the chat section. He says, I had the weirdest experience last night. I was taking off my hat to meditate, and I heard that thought, I'd better take off my hat, and realized why am I associating with this organic troubleshooter? Yeah. Noticing is a gift. Attention it is actually the true strength of man. That means if your attention is not synonymous with your will, then you don't exist. I think that's the issue, because human beings do many repetitive activities. Like, think about, it's like, can you say people are addicted to drinking water, but then we're like, people are addicted to having egos, constantly individualizing. But then we see is can you say, like, imagine you're someone, you're a little kid, and you hear that they say desires are bad in ancient traditions. You're like, renounce your materialistic desires and falsehoods. And you're like, okay, but what if I want a desire to drink a glass of water? Is that okay? Then the guy's like, yeah, that's okay. But the guy's like, what if I want a desire to, go party, And the person's like, no, that's not okay. So it's as if, like, one desire is, we don't give a shit about desiring, like this, like, nobody thinks they're wrong when nobody feels guilty drinking water. I mean, unless it's somebody else's water. But I'm saying, like usually you don't care. People plan for years to start a business, but when it comes to getting a glass from the cupboard and pouring water in it, they don't think. It's instantaneous. It's as if in that situation, there isn't even the question to be asked. So, there's certain moments where you got to be able to know what's the value. Is the question more valuable or the answer? And it has to do with your inner realms. There's been moments in my life where people have given me answers and it's revolutionized my experience. And there's been moments where people have asked questions that has revolutionized my experience. Because if we treat the world in two ways, I'm saying because it's a 50-50 coin flip, we don't know if mind came first or matter came first, why don't we prepare for both? Why is civilization freaking out over one story to rule them all, when we are all the storytellers building the greatest story? It's like when it's so fascinating that if you want to take a rational approach to reality, it is very necessary, it is very required for individual consciousness. But the issue is you need to know all the factors to make a perfect decision. This is why a calculating creature will find itself to have a flaw in nature. That means imagine like somebody who's like this very strict militant materialist who's like, I gotta see it to believe it. And the guy's like, imagine saying that I gotta see a grizzly bear. I gotta touch a grizzly bear, then I'll know the grizzly bear is there. It's like, sure, buddy, but you won't be there to say anything afterwards. So certain things you can't even get close to know. Like we can theorize what happens inside a black hole, but the mystery still stands. And I'm saying consciousness is the black hole of the inner realm. It is the mystery where what is this, and the language breaks in the light of a higher dimensional framework, hopefully. Can you imagine that it's like the person who wanted to see a dragon to believe it? It's like, that's why. Because all the people who went to see it, they didn't exist to share. There is this notion that in metaphysics, there's a lot of human beings who have metaphysical experiences, but they reach a point where they no longer subjectively exist to themselves, so they feel silence is the ultimate truth. Because they feel silence is the ultimate truth, it releases them from their suffering, but it also releases them from their responsibility of their individualism in their lifetime. So here's the thing, mysticism may be nice, Zen, meditation, all of these take you towards a sort of selfless grace of a pre-unified realm. But I'm telling you, there is a joy however way you walk in this world. That means when you see every human being has the possibility to smile and frown, It's honestly engagement and a certain honor to the first wave of information that comes in experience. That means if the person was in heaven, just taking this idea, if you're in a system where you don't have to worry about any consequence, then there can be no declaration of purpose. That means heaven is a purposeless abode. Its purpose is not based on the world anymore. It's as if right now we feel it's just a world, but it's like this whole next level mystical. I got this feeling from mystical writings where it was as if they knew there was something else, but that knowing wasn't in shape. So it's as if knowing there is something else, but that something else is not a shape. It's like you want a more complex riddle. So Daniel says when the guy sees the real dragon, he freaks out, so the dragon leaves. Yeah, or the dragon just is like, yo, is this free food? Like, what is this? I don't know. Dragons in mythology, or certain, I think more Nordic mythology and Chinese mythology, they were signs. They were symbols. And you know what's fascinating? The more metaphysical life was, the more multidimensional it was, the less there was grabbing on to the contents of a certain dimension. You know, it's like right now we feel we are in a location. Right now we feel like a person in a world. I feel the other side of the whale, we are the world and the person. Can you imagine? Can you imagine all our thoughts right now? Every thought every human being has, it's just human beings that have gone to the other side. Can you imagine this? I'm just saying this as a thought to entertain, nothing serious. But I'm saying, like, because it comes to the unknown, there's a freedom of design. But I'm saying I feel like I got this idea from the caterpillar. The caterpillar for me was a WTF moment in studying nature psychology. An incredible WTF moment. Why? Because I looked at the evolutionary human being and I'm like, it took us so long to get where we are. But look at this caterpillar. In a short time, it transforms into a different being. It transforms. It goes through a metamorphosis. It goes into a cocoon where all the cells of the caterpillar die. When the last cell of the caterpillar dies, then the cell of the butterfly emerges. So it's an instant where the cell of the caterpillar is 0 in value, and suddenly the cell of the butterfly is 1 in value. Do you see? And what do you notice from the caterpillar's evolution into the butterfly? Holy shit, the caterpillar was walking in a two-dimensional plane. It had so many legs. Now it has wings to experience a three-dimensional plane. So it's as if nature wants to experience more of whatever it is. So consciousness is novelty's urge. Terence McKenna was onto something. You know what? That means human beings. Like if you ask right now, what do you desire? You know, or as Alan Watts would say, what do you desire? You know, like in his own. But I'm telling you this: what do you desire means what can you desire? Who is desiring? Where are you desiring? What happens after the desire? All phenomenal questions that accompany that view. So the desire, imagine your desire is no longer for an object only, no longer for a subject only, but it is there for experience, for unknown experience. I think we're all dying to see the world live in a new way. And you know what the messed up part is? Back in the day, this was the coolest thing you could do. There wasn't technology, there wasn't media, there was not much even you could do. It was such simple, boring lives that that was the joy of life. That was the mystery of life. They're like, okay, for how many years of my life can I just be this farmer? And then suddenly the farmer was like, holy shit, who am I? And then the questions came. And then the mind roared. Let me tell you, there's two components for working with the unknown. And it's balance between observer and observed. Simple. That means, like whoever's listening to this, I want you to look at the palm of your hand. Just look at the palm of your hand. As you're looking at the palm of your hand is objective. The lines on your palm are objective. But the one looking, is it matter? Are you an object when meaning is arising from nothing? Are you just an object when there is evocational properties, when we have free will? I mean, come on. It's as if we are trying to see the world, if we're trying to see the world as, here's the thing, I think maybe in 100 years, the view on consciousness is going to be like we're antennas, and consciousness is a signal. And so the antenna is one room, one dimension, and where the signal is coming from is its own dimension. Or even we can treat the antenna as its own dimension, the signal its own dimension, and where the signal is coming from is another dimension. I'm just saying that we have advanced in known studies. We have not advanced in unknown studies as a species. We have not studied the unknown. We have feared it. We have perverted it by esotericism in certain ways, in certain contexts. That means it's as if like the whole idea of that which was beyond was that it's beyond what's in this realm. So if anybody has a spiritual, metaphysical standpoint that its behaviors are just from this realm, it's kind of like, you know what it is? It's like the human experience is like you find yourself in a nightclub, but you know your home is somewhere else. Now, Mr. Within is saying we find ourselves in the objective realm, but perhaps we know of a home beyond form, of a way the mind can be, where fear and language no longer are a leash. What is freedom if we are just atoms, if we are just meaningless energy? And what is freedom at the edge of our meaning where it goes back into the void? So I would say we should let go of this concept of, this may be a bit extreme and too bold, but I'm going to say it, maybe we should get rid of this idea of life and death, and it's as if those who emerge from the void and return to the void. And we stop fearing the void. We just have it as an unknown X variable in all the equations of our linear thinking. I'm just saying it's the way we're painting our own story in a story that feels we didn't tell. That's what the world feels to me. It feels to me in the sense it's imagination I didn't have to think of. It's there. It's like I don't have to imagine this cup in front of me. It's here. I could open my eyes, close my eyes. I don't have to give energy to observe its existence. Its existence is there. I would say the observance of physical phenomena compared to the observance of non-physical phenomenon, noumenon, as Kant would say. So the observance of non-physical phenomena actually has a toll on the physical. So that's the strange thing, that it's as if we're antennas, that it takes energy to receive energy in new ways. And I think that's just the nature of reality. For me, I was like, where's the idea of sacrifice coming from? And then I realized, oh yeah, cause and effect. The cause is sacrificing itself for an effect. That can be seen. There's either a view the cause has changed to the effect. There's a view where the cause still remains and the effect is on its own, And there's a view where it was always cause and the effect is also being simultaneously the cause. That means the fact that we think there's effects in this world is a sort of spectrumization, a segmentation of It's like we're cutting our moment like a cake and wondering why the pieces are. When we connect the pieces, it's not the same cake anymore. I feel what this implies is that if consciousness's cause is unknown, that means you have to observe. You have to let life make the first chess move and then comprehend the realm. Or the other way would be where you make the first chess move and you think you have comprehended the realm. You see, an ostrich may put its head in the dirt, but it doesn't solve the wilderness that is running towards it. You know, that means you can hide in the comfort of the inner realms, but the outer realms is where the show is, you know? You know, I feel the brain is a world generator. And as it's generating different worlds, the way it's leaping from world to world is through different notions of self. So consciousness is oscillating between self moving world moving self moving world moving self. When the world moves the self, divine, mysterious, unknown. When the self moves the world, known, progress, advancement of knowledge, whatnot. So the approach would be we are pilots. We are piloting between states of self change and world change. And there are certain states where the self and the world become equal. That means, if you remember, I was saying the cause and effect. So if it's just cause, there's no effect, then it's like, holy shit, every effect in my life was a lie. The cause was right there, you know? So you see, if it's just the cause, the effect is the illusion. And it could be that if the effect is real, the cause is the illusion. I feel the secular society is saying effect is real way more than cause. The non-secular, more religious-oriented or metaphysical-oriented mindset is saying, no, man, it's maybe causes came here first. So we're all fighting, believe it or not, over cause and effect. That's all the problem of consciousness. I feel it comes down to this. Some people are saying, yeah, yo, it was here before we were, and some people were saying, no, we were here and then it was here. You know, so there's different approaches. Now, I feel that really the mystery of consciousness doesn't have a scientific it's not doesn't have like an essay answer. For me, the world, I mean, check it out. The external realm is vast. You look at nature and you're like, look at how much stuff exists. Like, what is this? Why so much designs? Why are there so many different kinds of leaf? Why isn't the tree just being like just giving one leaf, one kind of leaf? You know? And so what it is, it's like genetical content knows. Like your heartbeat knows its life purpose. You know, but it's just the abstract individual that is wondering what should I do here, and that's evocational. So I'm saying that we have been identifying with our mind as language because we think it's being projected from the body, but Mr. Within is saying, what if that we are users of our mind which arise as language? Okay. So Charles in the chat section, guys, uh, that inner wholeness, it is for who whole? The mystery of consciousness takes us beyond the language threshold. I will not let language have the driver's seat of an experiential being. It is the ultimate cruelty. That means, think of this way: it's like when a person is hurts themselves, they are being cruel to the world. I personally take this piloting approach very seriously, and I even consider the notion of a co-pilot. I have attempted in these talks to explain it in the best way that it is how in if there were higher dimensions, we don't exist as individual object subject based entities or subject object based entities. We exist as rhythms. Right now we feel the conscious mind is projecting the unconscious. We're going to see, no, the unconscious is moving the conscious mind. We are going to become the world next. That means I wouldn't be surprised if the transformation of the human material entity is a complete shift into an immaterial rhythm. I feel we exist as particle based entities, but when we live life, we are adding a momentum. We're giving it some sort of rhythm. And I feel life should be lived as a rhythm here. I'm not joking. If an advanced civilization, there was a time they would say back in the day, people would all speak in verse. And I was like, no way, and the reason is because they had the freedom. Right now, we're living at a time where the ancients had a ridiculous amount of freedom, but didn't have the technology. It's like the same issue we see where the kid is young, has energy, but doesn't have wisdom. The person is old, doesn't have energy, but has wisdom, you know? So it's as if like in history, something similar is happening where back in the day, they had, you can say, a more freedom in their inner realms, but less of an alphabet to express it. Now we have less freedom in our realms with more of an alphabet to express it. When I say alphabet, I mean we have way more ways of doing something we know than actually attempting to find something new in the unknown. That means when I saw the educational system, I just, believe it or not, I shook my head. You know why? Because you see that people are either going towards the new or they are not. And so many people in the educational system, they were there to just get something. They were there to get a weapon from the educational system for the economical sector, so they could then run into the battlefield of the economical sector. It wasn't to actually for the merit of just knowing. I don't know how many people in this life, and I thought, wow, this really makes society an illusion if you're living in a system that is never allowing you to question beyond it. That's a definite clue. That's a definite clue something needs to change. You know, when there's a saying when they say it's too good to be true. When it's too good to be true, it's too good to be true. Like there's something like that. And it's also same where sometimes when a person thinks they know something and they're certain, they're like 100%, yeah, this is the way. Then it's like, wait a minute, is it too good to be true? you know? And so that too good to be true nature means there is more. There is other ways that reality is being calculated. That means sometimes when I experience doubt or sometimes where there's a feeling of hesitation, I study the hesitation. I'm like, what is that? Why did that happen? You know? For me, I think the scholarly staircase up the mountain of a temporary lifetime, you find that staircase when you realize the mystery of your eyes deserves an effort to be solved. And consciousness, the way I'm saying, it's going to become a non-individual, non-dual event. So imagine right now we're like, yeah, I'm a body, I got a soul, the soul is somewhere else, and the world is something else, But imagine we reach a point where we cannot be, it's not that we cannot be, it's just that we had immortal technology. There was this juice you could buy from the grocery store and it was called immortal juice. And you drank this juice and you were immortal, imagine. Okay? If you were immortal, how long would you get bored from being an individual? We get bored. I mean, think about the human being. We get bored by the nature of not moving too much. What does that mean? That means the meaning of life is never a painting on a wall. So the attempt of our whole educational system, our language has to evolve. It's like even if the educational system gets its act straight, is the language enough? Back in the day, the question, "Who am I?" was uh, was a beacon. Now you ask, who am I? People are like, hey man, don't go too deep. It's just, there's no meaning. It's just stuff here hovering, you know? Whether we see it as there is meaning or not, because our minds have the capacity for meaning, they will entertain it. This is why I feel the human being, the inner realms, is the last sacred ground. It's something that no idea, nothing, no dictator, no cruel ideological system could defeat. There is something to the moment that no one can touch, even you can't touch. Which that's the profoundness of it, you know. For me, when I realize I'm more on Rene Descartes' side. That means for me, I see reality as multiple rooms. This is why I don't get lost in the wars of one step in the staircase. That means that rock star on the stage, in the zone, just singing his soul out, is literally not a person in that moment. It's an event. The whole moment has been embodied. It's as if like the soul of the moment looks at the troop and says at ease, and all archetypes evaporate because clarity's in the room. I want to go into a quote tunnel of consciousness. I want to share with the audience what other people in the world have said about consciousness, and how the inner realms of human beings has approached that idea. In a quote tunnel, I'm just going to read a bunch of quotes pretty much. Albert Einstein. No problem can be solved from the same level of consciousness that created it. Kingsley Amis. Consciousness was upon him before he could get out of the way. Robert Anton Wilson. Consciousness itself is an infinite regress. This explains coincidences. Consciousness itself is an infinite regress. Regress, why that word? Regress. This explains coincidences. Yeah. So what Robert Anton Wilson means is, if we are going from the future to the past, we already know what has happened. So it becomes a coincidence. I think that this is another way of Robert Anton Wilson saying the unknown's moving the known. Pretty much, guys, this system I'm sharing here in this talk, all human beings can be it's universal. All creatures, even if it's like an alien extraterrestrial comes in, the model works for that. And what is it? It's that either the known is moving the unknown, either the unknown is moving the known, or there is the inconceivable witness. It's three angles. From these 3 points, there is no, I don't know what people are knowing. Like what, like, you know what I mean? Like, like either the known is moving the unknown is moving the known, or the inconceivable witness is in the room. The inconceivable, the room is alive. It's like the person's like, is it me? Do I have a soul, or is it this body? And then somebody was like, hey man, it's the planet. It's the whole universal event as one experience. Miguel de Unamuno says the only way to give finality to the world is to give it consciousness. The finale of consciousness being the resolution of the world. There is no resolution. We are candles in a dark room. You either are aware of the light in the room or you're not. Richard Gerber, or as the poet Rumi says, There's the light beam of the sun. Imagine hitting a candle flame, and the inseparability of the candle, of the individual based conscious entity, with the recognition that the field was there before. So I could tell you that the confidence you find in someone who thinks they're eternal is it is not, it is the notion that possibility is prioritized. It doesn't necessarily mean just this. You see, we're not robots, but we judge ourselves as if we are. For me right now, it's as if we are acting, the whole species, me included. It's like the whole species is at this level where we're acting artificially intelligent before artificial intelligence. It's like AI comes and says, imagine super intelligent computers, suddenly they take a kind questioning approach and they look at the human being and they're like, what am I? Where did I come from? The super intelligence computer is asking us. And we're like, you came from our imagination. And then the AI imagine says, then where did you come from if I came from your imagination? And that's where we reach a point where we will wonder if we were the inventions of higher dimensions, which is a totally game changer in metaphysics. It creates its own branch. Let's see what we can call it. We have metaphysics. Um, let's call it neo-metaism. Neo-metaism. That means the newest action of the beyond, the newest reception from the beyond. I think this could parallel the finality. The finality to the world is to give it consciousness. That means what's the purpose of the world? For it to be conscious of that purpose. Bruce Lipton. Through consciousness, our minds have the power to change our planet and ourselves. It is time we heed the wisdom of the ancient indigenous people and channel our consciousness and spirit to tend the garden and not destroy it. Richard Gerber. Consciousness is the stone that creates the waves in a sea of nothing. Wow. What an excellent sentence. I'm gonna share this in the chat section so people can share it in their social media. Okay, nice. Guys, Daniel in the chat section, he's shared this word called Atziluth, from the Kabbalistic tradition. Now, this is in the Kabbalistic tradition. I just looked it up. It's considered the divine dot, and it's the world of emanation. We could say in Vedic thought, in ancient, you can say Vedic yogic thought, They had a similar analysis where they saw this earth as the bottom dimension of a mountain, of Mount Meru, and the higher dimensions were the different lokas, Brahma Loka, Vishnu Loka, and whatnot. And so the highest, as you went up this multidimensional mountain in Vedanta, you went closer and closer to being avatars of knowledge. Right now, we are users of knowledge. That's when you become an avatar of knowledge. Right now, the expression is more important than the rhythm. Or sorry, let me say that again. The expression is not conscious of the collective rhythm. To be an avatar of knowledge, that means your identity is not based on the changing, the conditional components to life. That means you have found the unconditional eyes. Imagine it like this: we appear. Oh, sorry, guys. The word was called at Ziluth. Whoever came up with this word, if they had a Twitter account, it would probably be like the symbol at Zilu. It's like hashtag hashtag at Zilu, the highest divine plane of knowledge. So anyways, there was this idea that this world is multidimensional. As you went up the dimensions, up the staircase of paradise, you became more an avatar of knowledge. So you see, it became the difference between the angel, the archangel, and the human being. And you can say from a religious approach. From a religious approach, the difference is that the angel doesn't have free will, and it doesn't want free will. It is the divine will. The angel is the emanation of the sun. But man has free will. The light enters his eyes. And there's a processing of the data, and then he's like, yo, I could do this, I could do that. So there's movement then. So I'm saying that the inconceivable is alive. We just can't comprehend it. There is ultimately just movement going on. That means if a child, like imagine a child in a country that's unfortunate and at war, and the parent is just covering the child's eyes from the tragedy is going to happen, and the child, imagine in that moment, looks at the parents and it's like, why is this happening? What would the parent say? The parent, would say, it's okay, it's just happening. That means there's so many things beyond our control that sometimes when I look at suffering, I'm like, if I want to suffer, there's endless things to suffer about. It's as you can suffer as much as the edge of the universe, if you could see it. I could suffer how in like in trillions of years, the Milky Way galaxy and our neighboring galaxy, the Andromeda galaxy, are going to intersect. They're just going to become like an X. And when that happens, when the disks intersect, it's going to be a certain situation where they're going to think they're the only ones in the universe because they're so far from other galactic clusters, other galaxy clusters. So what I'm telling you is there's something strange in the world, that it is not just based on linear meaning. Linear meaning is like it's like an alien landing on Earth, and this person being like, oh man, this alien's doing irrational. I'm using as much logic as possible to comprehend this alien's behavior, but it's just I can't comprehend it rationally. you know? And that's because rationality is a tool. Science is a method. Philosophy is a method. We just haven't seen religion as a method also. They're all methods. Who is using the method? Now that's philosophy. That's the great question. That is the roar of the philosopher in the void. Guys, I'm just looking for something. I want to put these two pictures up. All right, guys, I found the pictures. Take your attention to the wallpaper for a second, and you will see. This is pretty much what I was saying. This is the Hindu approach to it, the Vedic thought, and I'm going to show you the Kabbalistic tradition. Where was the picture? Okay, there we go. So, I don't know how many people are familiar with Kabbalah. It's a. I'm going to read for you here. It says it's an esoteric method, discipline, and school of thought in Jewish mysticism. You see, guys, the beautiful thing about mysticism was it didn't have to do with any sort of branding. It was the questionings that drew human beings beyond what was the common towards the uncommon. And it made them wonder about what was more. You know, so what I'm showing right now, the parallels to you between Kabbalistic tradition and the Vedic tradition. So this is crucial to notice the parallels here. Where's a better picture? Just hang on, guys. Hang on. So, guys, if you pay attention to this, let me see if I can make this bigger. Uh, okay, there we go. So, whoever, just look at the wallpaper, guys. Whoever's tuning in, if you can't look at the wallpaper, I've pretty much put a picture of the Kabbalistic dimensions alongside the Vedic dimensions, the multidimensional, the metaphysics. This is the metaphysics of two cultures that are very similar in parallel. And it's not just these two cultures, many other cultures had a similar metaphysics as well. I don't know if it was one idea that got around or if it was like people were antennas picking up the same signal in different parts of the world. Of course, you should see both of these models in the wallpaper I've presented as a mountain, okay, metaphorically. And each part of the mountain, when you climb, is different. Now, in the Vedic standpoint, we're of course all kind of like in a God's dream position. I don't know. I remember it was like um, it's like 54 million years of life, something like that, is equivalent to like 3 days of sleep for like the ultimate godhead archetype in Vedic tradition. So there's something like that. And what that means is the more bottom you are on the mountain, the more life is an illusion, the more it's real that the temporary is more real. The more you go up, the more the eternal is real. And the eternal is cause without an effect. The temporary is cause with an effect. And you can say what we're saying is our consciousness. Somebody once said the difference between the word consciousness and the word awareness. What's the difference? Oh, consciousness, there is a design it's looking at. There's a form to the moment. But awareness is unconditional. That's why when they say self-awareness, that means you are unconditionally realizing this attention that is being yourself in a certain condition, you know? So consciousness is definitely a mystery. Let's continue with the Kotan, guys. Henry Miller. Analysis brings no curative powers in its train. It merely makes us conscious of the existence of an evil which oddly enough is consciousness. I mean, the issue is anything we consider intelligence, we're considering it animate. So, like, it's as if, how do we know? It's like, if consciousness didn't have to, if awareness was the truth, it would be like it would be a sort of, what's the word? Panpsychism. So panpsychism means like it would pretty much like in this TED talk I saw recently, David Chalmers. He's like this cool philosopher, and he says it's like vegetarian. I don't know. Pretty much the picture he's painting, like because you're seeing a mind to all things can have a mind. That means it's like if you throw an object in the ground, it's like you're hurting that object potentially. You know, if you are eating plants, you're like hurting that plant. You know, it's like if you're eating an animal, you're hurting that animal. So it's all it's like see it in this way that the human mind has imposed an insta definition into the moment to phenomena. So when you look at an object, when I'm looking at like this pen in my hand, I call it a pen. The word pen is instant. Do you see it simultaneously arises when I see the object. So what is this branding mechanism that the mind has done? So you see that a part of how the person, who the person is how the world moved you, but also how you moved yourself. And the most fascinating thing is everybody has a past. We've all got here from the past, but the past is past. It's done. It's gone. The past broke up with us. You know? Muji. Consciousness is the greatest movie maker in the whole world. There goes my film career. There goes my filmmaking career, you know. Consciousness, you know, you can't beat consciousness when it comes to making films. Muji has incredibly, in that sentence, given my purposelessness purpose. Amit Goswami. Consciousness is not mind, it is the ground of all being, the ground of both matter and mind. Matter and mind are both possibilities of consciousness. Joseph Brodsky. The real history of consciousness starts with one's first lie. Aldous Huxley. Consciousness is only possible through change. Change is only possible through movement. So Aldous Huxley is honestly, if Aldous Huxley had a podcast out of every person in history, he would win. He would get the most, he would be the Joe Rogan of the historic podcasting hypothetical situation. Lewis Mumford. The ultimate gift of conscious life is a sense of the mystery that encompasses it. Carl Jung. There is no birth of consciousness without pain. Clifford D. Simic. Without consciousness and intelligence, the universe would lack meaning. C.S. Lewis. Consciousness is either an inexplicable illusion or else revelation. Thomas Nagel. Consciousness. What is this? Without consciousness, the mind-body problem would be much less interesting. With consciousness, it seems hopeless. George William Frederick Hegel. The history of the world is none other than the progress of the consciousness of freedom. Wow. Yeah, the inner realms justify how far we feel we've come in the outer realms. So anyways, guys, those are the parallels. I'm going to read one more quote and then I'm going to get back to the talk. Actually, I'll read a few more. Lao Tzu, actually I'll read this one only. Lao Tzu says, the key to growth is the introduction of higher dimensions of consciousness into our awareness. Albert Einstein said the same thing at the beginning when I read his quote. He said, you can't solve a problem from the same level of consciousness that created it, you know. So what does that mean? That means whoever you are, wherever you are in your life, I want you to see the story you think you are and have been as just like a book written so far. The past is a book on the shelf, and now there's a notebook in front of you. And so many people don't realize, but I want to bring this sort of universal approach because the next greater languages are not an alphabetical system. They are the language of rhythmic design and how in the inner realms of the future generations, geometry is going to move in ways that we can't fathom now. Why? Because either the world updates or the self updates. Either the person in the vehicle stops moving or the vehicle stops moving. And right now, both the vehicle is moving and the person in the vehicle is moving. So the value of the moment is strangely self-generated, but your sense of self is coming from how you're looking at the world. So your attitude is suggesting the momentum of your psychology. And so what does freedom mean? That means get a piece of paper as a human being. I think every human being should be made to do this. That you go take a blank piece of paper, go somewhere in nature. I recommend early in the morning at dawn before the sun comes out, the sky is like blue or something, and get a cup of tea or coffee or something and get a pen and a piece of paper and go sit down and be like, what is freedom? Like, holy shit, what does this mean? And what it means is we want this greater outcome, but we're not willing to sacrifice certain things. So it's strange. You want long-term freedom, you can't have short-term freedom. You want short-term freedom, you can't have long-term freedom. Do you know? So we have to try to build a system where the civilization takes care of the member of civilization's blind spot, and the members of civilization take care of the blind spots of the politician. So if a politician makes mistakes, instead of the crucible mob mentality occurring, it's as if we raise. You can human beings, pretty much you can do two things. All human beings, you can look down upon them, or you can look up, or you could look unknown. You could keep it unknown as well. But I'm telling you, most human beings, based on their preferences, their conditionings, their tastes, how they have walked in this life, they're based on their likes and dislikes, their attention opens up. That means if you notice, if there's someone you don't like, you don't even care to give an intelligent answer. But if there's someone you like, you care to give an intelligent answer. And what does that mean? That means there has been a commonality. Because we are 8 billion random human beings, do you know, even though we're in the same physical outer realm world when we open our eyes, every person's inner realm, every person's identity is different. And now, in modern times, we want a freedom, and this freedom doesn't have a way to express. The educational system, oh my God. I would give the educational system could give any child an A plus. I give the educational system an F. The whole system, because it's as if, think of how many human beings have entered educational systems, but their assignments have been for the void. Because there has never been a true, authentic care for where is the edge of the known. People just want, I'm telling you, people would just want to get by, not realizing that that's a sacrifice in itself. I mean, and sacrifice maybe is not, that's an opportunity cost in itself, For me, when Hegel, I kind of went silent when I read his quote. He said, the history of the world is none other than the progress of the consciousness of freedom. So your consciousness, how you are aware of yourself as an individual, has to do with also how you have accepted whatever phenomenology experience as a definition. So it's as if becoming responsible, no longer thinking of imagination, reality in a strict, archaic way, but thinking, all right, we're advanced human beings, we have an outer realm when we open our eyes, there's an inner realm behind our eyes. So when you speak to someone, or when a parent speaks to their child, for example, the child doesn't say something, but the child is startled, the parent's like, all right, shout it out, tell me what's going on in your inner realms. And the inner realms is something where there's discretion. We evoke this sense of honor. Honor, that it's as if the inner realms are sacred. Right now, if it's like when it's we don't care for human beings. Because we are only considering their potential based on visible analysis. So for me, it's as if like people can say they're not creative as much as they like, but they're the artwork of nature. So, so it's like the universe is creative. I don't know what to tell you. All right, I'm going to read one more quote. Buddha, yeah, we can't ignore Buddha when it comes to this. Okay, I'll read John Locke first, and then I'll end off with Buddha. Consciousness is the perception of what passes in man's own mind. See, John Locke is pointing to an inner realm here too. And I'll read this one too. It's from Dennis Weaver. It says, changing mass consciousness is an individual responsibility. And last but not least, Buddha. And hopefully this is an accurate quote. He who experiences the unity of life sees his own self in all beings, and all beings in his own self, and looks on everything with an impartial eye. So you see, mystical wisdom is the inseparability of the individual and the collective. But in modern times, we gotta maintain the individual and then build the collective, rebuild the collective. I mean, honestly, we just wake up and it's a sequence of events. And so, during those events, the texture of the event is different. And then we go back into the unknown. That means, imagine we consider no such thing as death, and we have a civilization that is just, these are beings traveling towards the known and the unknown. And so this is our unknown civilization. Imagine something like spectacular, guys. Imagine something probably, I don't know, no, I don't think anyone's thought of. Imagine for example, there's a story of Archimedes, this Greek mathematician, next level mathematician. And what happens is, I don't know if he was Greek, but anyways, like this mathematician back in the day, he's on the beach solving this next level math problem where he's suddenly caught on to the problem and he's attempting to solve it, you know? Suddenly he looks up, he sees an enemy soldier. Can you imagine you're on a beach alone as an old mathematician and you are solving this mathematical problem and there is only one soldier. One soldier has come and it's an enemy soldier. And this enemy soldier sees you and Archimedes looks at the guy and says, let me solve this before I die. And the guy doesn't let him solve it and he kills him on the spot. Now, what I'm saying is, imagine Archimedes, his mind, like a dream state, kept his body in the material realm. And he solved the problem. And I thought, what if our visible civilization is the tip of the iceberg, and we are actually, in the frontiers. It's as if, like, imagine a kingdom where people, they imagine some back in the day. Imagine this king is like expanding his empire, and he gets to a mountain, and he sees this strange castle, and he goes into it and he sees the castle is built into the mountain. And the castle inside it has endless rooms. And the more they dig, they see the castle is going towards the center of the earth. A structure so huge that what they felt was the visible castle was just the tip of the iceberg. So I'm saying, what if our consciousness of what our civilization is, what is going on, is the tip of the iceberg in what we thought was a singular battlefield, but was actually a multidimensional playground. And so we are, of course, elemental creatures, yet stories give us souls, give us individual souls. The Atman needs the language nearby. Language is, honestly, there's times where you might think, like, this is strange, but I have cried for historic events. And it's strange. Just their implication. It's like thinking of war and thinking of, like, no way. People just wanted, they were just, like, do you know what I mean? It's like giant. I don't know. I think it's the good thing is, I think we've passed the really early childhood of our species. I think the species, let's say, is at a young level. That means right now, because everybody wants expression, you can say, like, that's the most I don't know. We are the presence of an attention that's natural. That I know. Attention is naturally here. The breathing naturally happens. You don't have a second thought. Nobody believes or disbelieves they're breathing right now. So it's directly experiential. It's accessible. We are being it as it is happening. So I feel it's the same. That we are being the mind as it's happening. We are like two movements. We are the movement of matter. And so what does this mean? This means, for the first time, we are considering space has a soul. Who knew? because it was always through a sort of challenge. There is the simple life, which I personally feel you got to get comfortable with the simplicity in life in order to be able to handle the complexity. You know why? Because when the complexity becomes intense, you're going to be pushed to simpler levels. Now, this is the issue for those human beings on this planet who everything they've done, they've been victorious. That means, imagine you're like the child of a trillionaire. And so everywhere you have gone, imagine back in the day, let me give a medieval example. Imagine you're a prince or princess and everybody has been just artificially like great to you, you know? it's as if that, let me tell you, you could be a strong soul, but if you can't see the outer realms, that means that strength was a strength only you could see. See, there's a part of life where you can just sit back and look at it, and there's a part of life where you have to engage because there's a design event or orientation to it. That means you got to move for there to be an animation of the individual. So like right now, if literally there was no sound, there would be no identity, you know. So I'm telling you, that's the fascinating thing. That means the body language can go a certain level, but then the mind's language is the advancement. So I'm thinking of it this way. In the Bhagavad Gita, just to advance this idea, in the Bhagavad Gita, there's this notion of pretty much the metaphor for the intelligence of the human being is that your body is the horses. Your mind is the chariot driver, and the soul is the one hidden in the chariot. Now, check this out. So, the chariot driver has listened to the instructions of the soul. You know? The chariot driver's task is to handle the horse. So, the mind is the chariot driver, just like he has like those like ropes connected to the horse in his hand, you know. He is controlling his sensory expression as an observant mind. Now, when it comes to the notion of the soul, so this is where the idea of intuition comes in, and the idea of the logos. The logos was the inner guiding voice. It was how back in the day we were in a symbiosis with the collective being. Now we have ideologically detached ourselves through materialistic resolution from that logos. And we haven't detached ourselves. I mean, it's impossible it's as if like, it's like you're in the world. It's like a drop trying to be separate in an ocean. It's like the only way is to just freeze. So, anyways, the horse is a metaphor for the objective realm, and the chariot is a metaphor for the subjective realm, the mind, which is in language. So you could say, imagine the horse speaks a language, the body has its language, the chariot has its language, and the soul has its language. Okay? And so the language of the body is how well the mind, the subjective self, can comprehend its environment and its ecosystem, and even to, excuse my language, to give a shit, to want to see more about the world. Like that's just a personal thing. You gotta want to see it before you want to believe it. So you gotta want to at least see it. So that want means that we're still explorers. That means the explorer's inspiration hasn't died in the human species yet. I'm just saying that exploration is now going on a subjective level, and it's going to go even beyond that. So the chariot driver has a language, the mind has its language, the body, the horses have their own language, intelligence, and the soul. Now the soul, check this out. The chariot and the chariot driver are all visible from the outside. But The person inside the chariot is invisible. And there's this notion that if the chariot driver falls asleep and suddenly the whole chariot, the whole simulation, there's suffering and pain, and the chariot, the soul from the chariot steps out, taps on the shoulder of the mind and says, "Hey, take care of your body. Take care of your stay grounded." You know, just because we can build airplanes and fly into the sky, and in the future have jetpacks and fly into the sky and fly to work, doesn't mean the value of our shoes is lost. Just because we make advancements in quantum physics doesn't mean, for example, certain archaic, let's say, archaic ideas don't have a value for the stories that human beings are journeying through. So the chariot driver, what is the language of the chariot driver? Now check this out. Imagine we right now, this thing is going on as a universal model of the psychology's, just a universal model for individual expressions, true positioning. So, the language of the body, physics. The language of the mind, the language of the soul is silence. The language of the mind is story, event, because stories are events. So the mind is actually, I think this is the fascinating thing. When the child is born, I was looking at child psychology just to understand how I grew up as an infant. I looked at my psychology and I'm like, okay, so that means there was no identity. There was no identity. The child's brain, like the children aren't born being like the doctor slaps the newborn baby on the back, the baby breathes and the baby turns around, it's like, thanks doc. It's like, no, the child doesn't have an ego, doesn't have an individuality, doesn't have an identity. It's a whole moment. So I feel we are going from reverse. I feel we are being worlds first, then selves. But because we're thinking we're selves first, we're wondering about the glory of an endless world. So there's different ways it can move. It's like if you are thought oriented, you're bound by the thought. What else can you do? If you believe in something, like for me, if you actually there's something that this is why the agnostic is dishonored by both sides. That means that means the religious, the theist, and the theist looks at the agnostic and says, it's shame, and the atheist looks at the agnostic and it's like, shame, you have no honor. And the agnostic is like, guys, what if there's more? There's always more to the story that is changing. But for now, we share what we can, because what else can we do? So the horse, the language of the horse is the language of the physical realm. The language of the chariot, the language of the mind is, again, the narrative, the linguistic simulation. So I would say there's a language that objects speak, there's a language that subjects speak, and then there is the unknown factor, which is so unknown that in order for it to be known, your known wouldn't be the same known. The horse, this body, right now, for me, the mind is a witness. Oh, let me say it like this. The horse, the body speaks the language of, oh man, how do I say this? Okay, let me find an event for it. So let's say it's at night, the chariot driver is falling asleep, and the horses are freaking out, and the ride's becoming bumpy, but the chariot driver is not awake. So you can say it is in that moment the soul comes and sits beside the chariot driver or takes the wheel. This is the whole point about intuition. And the inner and the whole point of angels and guidance and love and God and light and all this was just intelligence. This meant the cause was conscious of its effect. That's it. That means it would be as if the world knows what it's doing before the person. So the mind, let's say in our modern society, is not caring for the horse. It's finding, it wants to escape the simulation of how there was this guy, I forget his name, but he said habit leads to the decay of the mind. That means if you don't add new dimensions to your life, you, I mean, why not, you know? Pretty much, it's like stagnant water is like, is less pure. So in life, you got to keep things moving. And you'll see, whether you like it or not, that's just the nature of reality. There's, in a weird way, stillness is a mirage in an entropic universe. So the language of the soul is silence. So when we have all the yogis and gurus and the Sri Ramana Maharshis and Mujis and Eckhart Tolles and Wittgensteins and whatnot, you know. So we are suggesting that there is the participation of an unknown dimension of intelligence. That means, you know what that means? That means we are effects that have to accept we still can't see the cause properly. So there's no point of ideological warfare, rather starting massive exploration projects all over the world. That means, like, I thought, like, the only thing the corporate culture needs to do is revolutionize its the linguistic simulation where the company has attained its personality from. The language, the image, the sight, the freedom. Because there was a time I wrote this word, guys. It was called, I looked at the word freedom and I saw the DOM, and then I created this word free domination. Free domination. As if in one word. So it was as if it was a freedom, but it was a freedom that there was some sort of lingering dimension of the dominant. Right? So it's kind of weird where we have to be humans, but we're doing it as animals, you know? You know, there's like definitely an animalistic level. So we are dressing the psychology of the human being superior to actually its what it is. You know what that means? That means when you see a child next time, you don't treat the child like. I'm not saying like the best thing is to ask questions from children, of course. You know, not to give them answers. The best thing is to ask questions so they give their own answers. Their mind gets used to looking at things and wondering about things, you know. But I'm just trying to say this picture where what if eternity and the void were siblings? Or eternity and the void were yin and yang? Or eternity and the void was like two spaceship types of civilizations where human beings could live. Two different types, you know. I don't know, the metaphor can stretch wherever, but I'm just saying, like, the unknown has the word known in it. That means without the known, the unknown can't even be noticed. The unknown is the blessing of evolution. It is the greatest gift that nature has bestowed man. An eternal, energetic source of wonder, where what is important roars. For we draw lines, you can draw a meaningless scribble, a meaningless line on a sentence, or you can draw, or you can write a actual sentence, or you can just cover the whole page with ink. There's so many ways that human beings can move. And I'm saying that the only thing that appears to me to be more superior than individual freedom, the only idea for me that is worth as an opportunity cost to the individual considering, is collective freedom. And the implication of group of 8 billion creatures getting to experience what their greatest blueprints on civilization may look like. You see, we have been judged out of exploration. We have been scolded out of our own authorization. And that's the nature of the world. The world is like is poetically, you can say, even like a battlefield where the weak die first. The weak suffer first. The strong don't even interpret the turbulence as suffering. They're like, why should I? If I do, every turbulence is suffer. I suffer. So how you define your suffering is important. It's like, manage your suffering, folks. Imagine a company in the future, suffering management systems, we manage the system that you are suffering through. Oh man. The world is an endless opportunity. Guys, I want to read for you a chapter from a science fiction work that I wrote in 2017. I don't know when I wrote it, but it was the sci-fi short story that I even sent to, what do you call it, contest, and I didn't get an email back, but I think it was because the editing format was wrong, you know. But the thing about it was called Project Adam and Eve. Project Adam and Eve. And I want to read for you in other talks, like, see this as a sort of Easter egg. I've left other fragments of this story in other talks of mine. But the story is this Project Adam and Eve. I'm going to tell you the fourth. I'm telling you the ending. I'm going to read for you the ending of this sci-fi novel I wrote. And the whole novel was. I'll catch you to speed. Let me just find it in my email. Okay, guys. So, guys, because I'm gonna take a different approach, mindset to this part of the show, I'm gonna define it as a segment. I'm going to put a checkpoint on the talk. Let me do that because I don't know if I'm going to find the checkpoint again. So let me put a checkpoint on the talk. Hold on, guys. So let's just keep it at this, that pretty much in this talk my effort was to say that what we feel is consciousness. It's a movement in every moment has unknown variables and known variables, and based on the ratio of the known and the unknown changing, your experience on what you feel the nature of the world is changes, right? So keep that in mind, that it's like the self is moving the world or the world moves the self. If you don't move yourself and the world moves, that's technically divinity. That's technically the will of something else is moving before you. You know, that means somebody who gets pushed. That's divine. you know. But I'm telling you, it's when the world moves the self, you got to be able to handle that. When the world moves yourself, it's okay. That's part of piloting as an advanced communicator in this life. That means sometimes in life you have a certain power, a certain ability, but you don't have the discretion or the way or the knowledge to use that ability. Do you see what I'm saying? So it's not just about looking cool in civilization anymore. It's about actual efficient evolution of skill in a practical way where we actually see it, you know? So let's keep the checkpoint as an advanced civilization that it is oscillating between an unknown cause and an unknown effect, and a known cause and a known effect. We can see this. We can see the movement of the known and the unknown. You can just go, like, the easiest way to discover the unknown is to put a blanket over your face and then remove it. Oh my God, there's more to the world. So anyways, guys, I'm gonna go into the story now. So I'm gonna end the talk here. I'm gonna share the story and then probably head off to Discord. So yeah, I'll end the talk here. This is the end of the talk. Now I'm just gonna share the sci-fi story. Yeah. All right, guys. Just to kind of catch you up with the context of the sci-fi story. Pretty much, I created this world, this setting in the world in the future, where the planet implodes, and there's this general in this. I called it the Galactic Interstellar Unit, if I remember correctly. This sort of secret space operation, you know, and it's called Project Adam and Eve, their operation. And there's this general, and specifically because I'm honoring the Christian archetype in this book, archetypes found in Christianity. It's the general in the book. His name is Gabriel. You know, this general comes in. I'll read you the beginning just for you to get a context, and then oh man, all right. It was the fall of the year. So this is the sci-fi story I wrote in 2017. Project Adam and Eve. Sorry. Anyways, I'm just doing this because this is like archival for myself as well in the future. It was the fall of the year 2149. A well-composed man dressed like an army general by the name of Gabriel walked into the room. His face was pale and at the same time captured by an urgent intensity, as if chaos had whispered into his ear moments ago. He looked at the two men and the two women in front of him who wore badges commanding officers would wear. General Gabriel of the Global Interstellar Unit began to speak. "We have failed. There was a long pause, and an atmosphere of great sorrow and intensity had filled the room. It is all over. We are left with the last option we have. You four are humanity's last hope. You must take Adam and Eve away at once. For the first time, four of the Earth's greatest commanding officers of the Global Interstellar Unit began becoming teary-eyed at the same time, but knew what had to be done. After a long pause, as silence could no longer keep itself, General Gabriel continued speaking. I will not be able to accompany you, and you will no longer be able to accompany your bodies. We have 30 minutes before the planet implodes, for it seems the violence of mankind has brought the apocalypse sooner. My brothers and sisters, you must enter the transcender machine. You must enter the transcender machine and immediately journey towards outer space and see the mission through. I will stay back to ensure the safety of your platform and protect the launch. There is no other option. It has been an honor to serve you as your general, but our species has made its final mistake. The fate of humanity is in your hands now. The two men and two women stood up from their chairs, maintaining a salutation pose. I don't know, that's how I wrote it. And responded with a great sense of pride and urgency surging through them. We understand, sir. It was an honor to be by your side. The four crew members headed towards the futuristic pods in front of them. After 10 minutes or so, four magnificently advanced and futuristically designed android bodies stepped out, gazing at General Gabriel. Each android had a unique neon glow emanating from it. The room was now filled with the colors blue, red, green, and yellow. General Gabriel spoke. My beloved family, your human consciousness has now been transferred and implanted into unending energy-powered android bodies. I was thinking like how should I define it? And I was like unending energy powered. So that means in the whole story, their android suits never run out of energy. They're always like power is never an issue for their suits in the whole story. In a sense, you'll see. In a sense, that's how I'm painting the picture. So he says, my beloved family, your human consciousness has now been transferred and implanted into unending energy powered android bodies. Your previous biological bodies are no more. These android bodies will ensure your greatest survival through the dangers of space and shortage of supplies, and they stand as reminders of the newest and last greatest technology mankind ever made on this planet. Even though our extinction on Earth is inevitable, may you be successful in seeing to the end Project Adam and Eve. These are my final orders and your final task, for mankind's errors can no longer be erased on this day. You are the last guardian angels of humanity. Strive fearlessly towards the future. You are our final salvation. General Gabriel continued on. He's just going like all out. I have prepared our latest Model X shuttle for you, and the cryo chamber that holds Adam and Eve has also been loaded on the ship. Protect them with all your might, and start a new beginning for us all, for soon our beloved planet will enter non-existence. I will leave you with these final words, my beloved family. So guys, this sentence is so crucial to remember, because I'm reading for you now the last chapter. It said the last sentence is all. This is what last thing General Gabriel is telling them. I think he says all will return to the unavoidable void, but mankind's glow shall never perish. Sorry, guys. I need a quick few-minute intermission. I'll be right back to tell you the last chapter. Okay, guys. Um, Thanks for holding on. Now I'm going to read for you. So the whole story is about these different human beings who their consciousness have been transformed in these like next level android bodies, and they have to take Adam and Eve, this girl and this boy, who are frozen in like this chunk of ice, like in like this cryo chamber, right? And there is a sort of program of civilization, advanced AI also in the cryo chamber. So it's just they just need to take it on, just get it to another planet. Like the human technology has made it so convenient on for their continuity afterwards. Now I'm reading in the story. I told you there was two women commanding officers and two men commanding officers. The two women commanding officers, yellow and green, and the two men, red and blue, they in some sense one by one in the story, the whole events of the story is they're just traveling for thousands of years in space, and they just come to certain situations, and one by one they die. One by one there's sacrifices. They don't die like they sacrifice themselves for Adam and Eve, for the future of the civilization. And remember, in the story, there I have said it's like the technology is their human soul is there. So there's moments where they sleep and they go out of the android body and they move around. You know, they have certain experiences, but it's the most advanced technology. Remember, it's sci-fi. So I'm gonna read for you all. So blue is the leader, and as they one fall, first yellow falls, then green falls, then red falls, then there's blue. And I'm telling you the story after three very big giant events in the story where these three of Blue's comrades have all fallen, and now it's just him. Right? So I'm going to read it for you from the end of after the android Reds, and after because their suits have color and the glow, they see the color of each. They just call each other by their color, and it's yeah. So Red's event, like the chapter dedicated to Red, is next level. Is way very intense. But this chapter, the ending of it is the finale, like the conclusion of it. So here. Now, guys, I've written different versions. This is one version of it, I believe. I think this is the version I just agreed to send for the thing, for the writers thing. But anyways, here, check this out. The walls of the sleeping chamber, this is in the spaceship, reflected his blue glow. He felt the absence of yellow, green, and red's glow as well. And now he was the last one remaining. As he walked over to the window of the sleeping chamber and gazed out from there, this time he did not just see space, debris. A strange feeling came over him. He noticed in the faraway distance there seemed to be a planet with 7 moons. He remembered his unforgettable dream. Oh yeah, he had a dream in the beginning. Oh my God, maybe I should probably read that part. Yeah. So guys, this is how the story originally begins. This part I gotta read. So the whole thing begins with Blue dreaming. It's in his dream. What could this mean? Is the first sentence of the short story. What could this mean? In front of him was a lake with a blue glow emanating from its depths. His feet found themselves on a vast bright golden pasture. It was almost sunset, and he could see 7 moons in the sky of the most beautiful planet he had ever witnessed. He was in some sort of paradise. He took a few steps towards the lake, and as he neared, suddenly 2 hands grabbed his shoulders from behind and turned him around. 2 glowing human-shaped beings stood with their faces unclear because of the white light shining from behind them. He could tell one of them was a man and the other a woman. The 2 beings with commanding voices said to him, "We will find you the moment you find us. Do not give up." Suddenly, the dream ended, and there he was in his sleeping chamber. He had had an unforgettable dream. As his machine arm wiped the artificial sweat on his android forehead, he stood up and walked towards the window of the futuristic space shuttle he was on. He gazed out of the window of the ship and only saw the same old space debris he had seen for 3,000 years. Even though he was an android, a surge of emotions overwhelmed him. Numerous artificial tears began running down his metallic face involuntarily. There were strong emotions surging through him. In the depths of his artificial machine mind, his soul had returned to the last memory he had on the planet Earth. And this was where I began speaking. This is the start of the memory in the fall of the Earth. This is General Gabriel and all that. So I started actually telling you the story from the memory, but before that, the whole memory was after Blue's dream. So pretty much Blue dreams. Excuse me. The android Blue is dreaming. An android is dreaming. That's how the story begins. Okay, in the dream of that. So there he sees these two glowing figures. He sees himself on this incredible planet. And then he sees that these glowing figures say, "We will find you the moment you find us. Don't give up." So now I'm reading for you the end of the book. So anybody's listening, is you have an idea. You're gonna have an idea of God. Let me just download this. This is constantly moving out of the window. Just. So pretty much Blue, remember that was just a dream he had at the beginning of the book. Blue right now, he saw a planet with 7 moons around it. He got shocked, and I'm reading the story from there. The Model X had now entered the atmosphere of this new planet that resembled Earth in a new way that none of... Okay, wait. He noticed in the faraway distance there seemed to be a planet with 7 moons. He remembered his unforgettable dream. He ran to the control room to set course. The Model X had now entered the atmosphere of this new planet that resembled Earth in a way that none of the other locations did. Even though the ship was damaged, the Model X managed to make a proper landing. Blue was now excited. Could this really be the correct planet? Could the divine mystery of his dream have foreshadowed something? Blue stepped out of the ship that was very damaged. Then his only remaining hand set the orb loose again to scan the planet. After a couple of moments, the orb had scanned the whole planet. There is a technology like that in the story, this orb that just has an ability to scan everything. The orb had scanned the whole planet and had shown a green light. The planet was safe, with no deadly creatures upon it. Blue felt tears forming in his eyes, android eyes, but no longer ones of sorrow. He felt he and his fallen crew had done it. He returned to the ship and one-handed, and oh yeah, I forgot to mention, in the previous chapter, he loses one arm before Red dies. He returned to the ship and one-handed pulled the cryo chamber of Adam and Eve outside. The ship was making strange noises and Blue knew there was no need for it anymore. After taking the cryo chamber out, Blue remembered Green's rosary was still in the cryo chamber room and it had perhaps fallen off the cryo chamber as he was moving it. He went inside one last time to take it, and before he stepped out of the ship the second time, an unthinkable tragedy struck. The door of the ship suddenly collapsed. There's something I gotta mention here. Their suits are incredibly next level and advanced, these android suits, but in the previous chapter where Red dies, they go into combat with such an intense thing that their suits get damaged ridiculously. So here, Blue, he's a damaged robot with like one arm pulling this cryo chamber of Adam and Eve out on this planet, which is the final planet he's come to. The ship was making strange noises and Blue knew there was no need for it anymore. After taking the cryo chamber out, Blue remembered Green's rosary was still in the cryo chamber room and it had perhaps fallen off the cryo chamber room as he was moving it. So Green, the android Green, what the woman, she was a nun in the story. So in the story, she was this nun for many years who got a vision, divine vision, to go and become the commanding officer of the most elite galactic, interstellar unit. So she has a rosary. So they all have android bodies, but she's like an android that prays and has a rosary. She's a robot that appears invisibly, like a robot praying. An android with a human soul. They're all like that. So, anyways, the door of the ship suddenly. Okay. So Blue remembered Green's rosary was still in the cryo chamber room, and yet it had perhaps fallen off the cryo chamber as he was moving it. He went inside one last time to take it, and before he stepped out of the ship the second time, an unthinkable tragedy struck. The door of the ship suddenly collapsed, breaking off his last remaining arm. Shocked with a sort of paralysis, Blue stepped back from the ship armless. An unbelievable shame and sorrow filled him. Deep down, a savage cry echoed in his android mind, for he knew what that meant. He could no longer insert the code of the cryo chamber anymore to open it. So Blue, they've got it through hell and back, and they're in this situation where they found the right planet. He's taken the cryo chamber out. He just remembers Green. He goes to get the rosary to add this memento from his comrade. And his hand, they're androids, right? And so the ship falls, the thing falls, and anyways. What I'm trying to say is he can't do anything. Was destiny cruel? Had he failed humanity? His arms were broken from the shoulders and he had no hands to type in the code for the cryo chamber to unfreeze and unlock it. He was silenced to the core from what had happened. Finally, he had reached the perfect planet, but disaster had struck again. He looked at the sky and wondered what a journey it had been. The sun reminded him of yellow. The trees reminded him of green. The red alien blood that splashed on his body from the conflict in the cube reminded him of red. I think in another version I wrote the birds reminded him. Even though his body could never get tired of its unique power source, his soul was tired in a way that his human memories could only understand. He fell to his knees. He realized he had no way of opening the cryo chamber. It was as if he had entered the garden of paradise, garden of heaven, but could not smell the flowers. He looked at the cryo chamber capsule and shouted as loud as he could, "Forgive me, mankind! Forgive me, Adam! Forgive me, Eve! Forgive me, red, yellow, and green!" Like he's just shouting, And he says, "I have failed." Like he's literally an android where he doesn't know what else to do. He's just shouting at the sky at this point. He felt he could do nothing more and he leaned against the cryo chamber, armless, closing his eyes. He no longer knew what to do. He had found the inhabitable earth, but there was no way he could open the cryo chamber. He needed a miracle and there was nothing in sight. As he closed his eyes, he thought about the repetitive dream he had. He thought about the two glowing figures he had seen that reminded him of Adam and Eve's future. He didn't know what would happen next, but then to his surprise he heard a voice. "You have not failed, Blue." At first he thought he was dreaming again, but the voice seemed to be coming from outside of him. He opened his eyes and to his shock saw the unbelievable. The same two glowing figures from his dream were standing right in front of him. And behind them was a bright white portal wavering. He was speechless. So there's these two figures, two glowing figures. They look like human in front of them, and there's a white wavering portal behind them. How could this be? Who are you? Shouted Blue. "We are your salvation. We are here from the future. We are here from the future, Blue. We are the grandchildren of Adam and Eve." Blue was shocked and stood up immediately. The glowing figures who were no longer part of his dream but now standing in front of him were real. He felt a surge of unspeakable surreal hope. Artificial tears now journeyed out of his machine face, like they had found their savior. Now, this is the two glowing figures speaking. The moment you landed on this planet, you created a new timeline. And 1,000 years from now, the new mankind has just created time travel and world peace is everywhere. Your task is done, dear one. The two figures elaborated further. We are the future selves and the grandchildren of Adam and Eve from a timeline. Okay, I don't know why I'm repeating this here. Okay, maybe this is the unedited version. Maybe this is why they didn't email me back. We are the future selves and the grandchildren of Adam and Eve from a timeline 1,000 years ahead of this current moment. You have not only completed your task, Blue, but all your friends are alive as well in our timeline. We will help you now. The artificial tears returned to Blue's face. He saw one of the glowing figures walk up to the chamber, and as Blue said the code out loud, immediately he saw the timer on the chamber finally. Sorry, it's not. It's something. Yeah, he saw the timer on the chamber finally be activated. Yeah, so the future already knows, but like they programmed, they opened the chamber. Pretty much that's the point. Then the two glowing figures looked at Android Blue and said these final words to him before they retired to the white wavering portal. Trust your dreams, Blue. The moment. Oh my god, why am I repeating this again? Well, anyways, the moment you landed on this planet, you allowed the future timeline of Adam and Eve to be accessible to you. Your task is complete. From this moment on, we are the guardian angels of our forefathers. Rest now. Yeah, this was the version. Okay, I know. This is the unedited version. This is not the version I sent in. I write different options where I see the possibilities. So in this is another way you could hear those two glowing figures speak to him and saying, "We are the guardian angels of our forefathers. So no longer machine needs to protect nature. Nature can finally protect itself." Blue could not speak, and if he still had arms, he would be bowing with his hands in grateful prayer above his head. The mission was finally accomplished. The future grandchildren of Adam and Eve returned to the portal after saying their goodbye. The android Blue was still in shock. He could not believe what had happened. There was a minute left to the timer. Blue was alone now. He looked at the lake in the distance in front of him. He remembered his dream and how he had seen a blue glow at the bottom of the lake. At that moment, he knew what he had to do. His time had come. And so he began walking towards the lake seconds before the cryo chamber opened. Blue's head had already submerged underwater. He walked to the bottom of the lake and laid down there on his back. As he looked up at the light of the sun beaming in through the water surface, he remembered the last words of General Gabriel. All will enter the unavoidable void, but mankind's glow shall never perish. A smile appeared on his face. He closed his eyes for the last time after his final gaze. As his human soul finally left his android body for good, Project Adam and Eve was complete. Humanity was finally its own protector. End of story. Okay, guys. So I'll the talk is ended at this point. Thanks for tuning in. That was the story. The best thing we could do about consciousness is to wonder about it. Now I'll be in the Discord for Q&A. Yeah. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Blessings.